Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Ball is Around Montreal. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight on the show, we look back at Canada men's national team's victory over Suriname and give our thoughts on the women's national team upcoming matches. That and a lot more on episode 204 of The Ball is Round. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Ball is Around Montreal. I'm joined by these awesome individuals, Elias Gregoriadis. Elias, I'm so sorry I said your last name so terribly. Can you tell me, how was your weekend?
There's a learning curve. It's a better effort than most, honestly. Not too bad. International break, so I got to watch Greece throw away their lead of the group in the Nations League, but then they beat Finland 2-0, so they clinched a qualification playoffs. You know what? It's better than expected, but still disappointing.
All right. Better than expected, but still disappointed. All right. So let's get with it. And as you can see, we have a special guest today with us, Mr. Alexander Gangaruzik. Again, so bad with last names. From One Soccer, writer for the CPL, and even his own pod, the Third Sub Pod, and so many other things Canada Soccer. Thank you so much for joining us today, Alex. Where in Canada do we find you tonight? Vancouver, Toronto? Are you in Montreal by chance?
I mean, I'd love to be in Montreal, but I'm in the best city in Canada. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. I mean, hey, it's my hometown. I always got to rep hard for Vancouver. But no, I'm doing well. And Andy, you did well with my last name. I'll say I've heard a lot worse, a lot worse, and I haven't heard much better. So it's pretty good.
Worse from me. I've butchered it in the past on this show. So you know what? Yeah. Better.
Oh man! All right, so awesome, guys. Let's get right into it. What do you say? We're gonna first start talking about the Canada men's national team. Friday night, we saw the men's national team defeat Suriname 1-0 on the first leg of the quarterfinals in the CONCACAF Nations League. Guys, before we dive into the lineup, since Jesse March joined Canada, the team has had 4 wins, 4 losses, and 3 draws before this game. How important was it getting a positive result out of the game for the team? Elias, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, this is, with as much respect to Suriname as possible, this was absolutely, you have to win or else it's a monumental failure. I was more interested in the how they went about getting it than if, because if there's doubt in a game like this, then you don't deserve to be competing at the top of CONCACAF, or maybe having a shout for the knockout rounds in the upcoming World Cup or stuff like that. So I was more focused on tactics and style of play and squad selection than anything else.
All right. What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one you got to win. Like Elias says, I think if you want to be a top team in CONCACAF, you got to win it. At the same time, I don't think it's as straightforward as maybe we're used to seeing, like just because it's Canada, Suriname, just because there's 101 spots between them in the FIFA rankings, just because maybe we haven't heard of Suriname. It's a very tough game, and we saw why it's a tough game, but I think it's ultimately won. Good teams find a way, right? The U.S. went to Jamaica. They didn't play that well, and they still won. Whereas Mexico right now, they're maybe in a bit of a decline. They went to Honduras. They probably played better than the U.S. did, and they lost 2-0. That's the reality of away days in CONCACAF. You have to go out and get the job done, and Canada went and got the job done.
Yeah, not only did Mexico lose the game, but their coach left hurt. So we'll talk about that later. We'll get to it. So assuming you guys, I think we mentioned it, so that we were feeling pretty good about it because these are the kind of games that we want to see Canada win, right? As the game went on, we're going to get into the, each position, analyze it. But as the game went on, how were you guys feeling? Did you guys at any point start feeling nervous, that maybe the score wasn't reflecting what you guys had expected, with the ranking and all that? What do you guys think? Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think what was good is that they were in control for the first half. Like they were never, they were never hanging on. It was all Canada in the first half. They probably should have, I think this could have been a very different game if maybe Ahmed puts his shot a little higher in the first half over the goalie instead of right at him. Or if, Tani Oluwase, who poor guy seems snake bitten for Canada. Just whenever it's shooting its posts, it's hitting a goalie's like toenail. Like this time it hits both posts. Maybe you put that in, it's a different game. I got worried there from 45 to 65. I think that's where they kind of lost the grip on the game a bit. Suriname woke up, but then they made some subs. It was good that Jesse Marsh made his subs early. We've seen that in recent games that sometimes he's a bit hesitant to use his bench, and he went rate 60. He's like, all right, let's get some control, bringing in, the guys he did. That was a good shout. And then, the last 20 minutes, you kind of felt like they were going to come out of it with something. So it's good they managed that 20-minute period and it was without any.
Absolutely. Elias, did you at any point lose your cool? Did you at any point start getting nervous? Like Alex mentioned, maybe at halftime Suriname woke up a bit.
It wasn't nerves so much as it was maybe a bit mild frustration, because I was expecting them to kind of, they never really lost control of the game, but they never really exerted their authority over it either.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've been stuck in this mode of, we just got, like, the last we saw of this team, they were like, in the Copa America, and they were fighting for their lives against teams that are, in the top 20 in the world. And it's a completely different dynamic. I don't think they understood how different the dynamic of the game was. So they kind of treated it as a battle amongst equals, when I wanted to see them maybe dominate the game a little bit more and assert themselves. Because at the end of the day, when you're a top 30 team, and if they keep on progressing like this, they're going to start flirting with top 20. You have to learn how to take that confidence away from teams. And like Alex said, right, in the beginning of the second half, Suriname had every reason to feel confident because of how it wasn't managed, but they definitely caught out of that first half with a best case scenario, I think. And so that gave them that extra confidence. But they have to learn how to go into these games with teams that they're, again, 101 points different in the rankings. You have to learn how to take the steam out of their engine right away, right? It has to be kind of almost suffocating. And I didn't get that. So that's the one thing I think that Jesse Marsh and the whole group have to kind of learn how to do as a team.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't put ourselves at the same level as whoever we're facing, right? We need to remember. I say we, but the Canadian team needs to remember what they are made of. All right. With that said, let's pull up the starting lineup, and we're gonna go ahead and analyze each position. All right. First up, we had a goalie. We had Dane Sinclair. We had Alistair Johnston, Bombito, Joel Waterman, Richie Larea, Ismael Kone, Stephen Eustachio, Schaffelberg, Ahmed David, and Ula Wasei. And the subs, we had Adekugbe, Bear, Buchanan, Chouanière, Crepeau, Joliette, Knight Lebel, Laren, Miller, Osorio, Sigur, and Sirois. So let's start from the goalie. Guys, what are your thoughts on Dane Sinclair? I'll start with you, Elias. What were your thoughts on his performance?
Again, he didn't have a whole lot to do, but what he did, he did it well. I'm interested to see how this goalkeeping dynamic is going to change now with the way that Maxime Crepeau's MLS season ended. It was long considered to be the default number one without really much of a debate. It was more just, Jean-Antoine Sirois, Tom McGill, Dane Sinclair, who's going to be the second. And now I think that there's definitely some doubt and definitely some competition there, which I like to see at the end of the day. When you're a national team, you want competition. You want people fighting for their spot. You don't want anyone to get complacent or take their spot for granted. So this is a best case scenario because Dane Sinclair, again, is a top keeper in MLS. And Maxime Crepeau, obviously, his record speaks for itself. So I'm happy with what Dane Sinclair did. You could tell a lot of times he was in command, and he did a really good job calming everybody down and kind of saying, guys, relax, let's go, and then reset the attack.
Absolutely. Alex, do you think we're with what Elias mentioned of the rise in stock in Sinclair's play and as well as Maxime Crepeau being relegated to the bench with Portland, do you think we're seeing kind of a change of the guard in the goalkeeping position for the Canada team?
I wouldn't say changing in the guard, but I think I really like how Jesse Marsh handled the goalkeeper situation, because I think one thing that was maybe a bit frustrating at times under John Herdman was that Milan Borjan, from 2018 to 2021, he was one of the best in CONCACAF. There was no problems, but Maxime Crepeau had kept knocking on the door and he never really got a look. And you're kind of like, all right, like Borjan's good, yes, but why not get Crepeau ready? Because you never know. Football's funny. Maybe Borjan drops in form, gets an injury, then you're with Crepeau and you're like, oh, I've never really seen him play. And they got lucky. The Gold Cup in 2021, they had one of those chances. Borjan ended up missing out on that tournament. Crepo did great, and we're like, all right, Crepo's good. We know that, but let's see more Crepo. And we just never really saw it. I like that Marsh is kind of keeping both ready so that, hey, if there's ever a moment where Crepo loses his starting spot like he did, or maybe he's not in form, that you can go to St. Clair and it's not even a thought. It's not even like away day in Suriname. No worries. I have full confidence in St. Clair, and that's the way it should be, because these two guys, they're not that far off from each other, really. I think the only thing that distinguishes them is style. Like St. Clair and Minnesota, he's asked to play a bit more on his line, a bit more of a true shot stopper. Whereas, Crepo, his best skills are sweeping. It's, it's coming off the line. It's being more aggressive. Those are the only real stylistic differences. In terms of level, they're very similar in terms of what they've done in MLS. So I like that Marsh has been like, look, I'm going to go with whoever's hot, whoever's confident. And I think that battle is going to get the best out of both of them.
100%. It's a good problem to have, right, guys? A good problem to have in the goalkeeping position when you just have that good of skill of goalkeeping. Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to move on to defense. Thoughts, Alex, of the back line?
Yeah, I thought the back four was good. I was curious to see what would happen of Waterman versus Miller, and then Larea versus Adekugbe. Larea I expected. I just think Adekugbe, he hasn't seen the field yet under Marsh. I don't think his first start was going to be away Suriname, so I wasn't surprised. Larea did his job. Waterman versus Miller was a lot more interesting because, you kind of wondered, okay, did Miller lose his spot at Copa America because Cornelius was so good, or is he maybe falling down the pecking order? And I think the fact that Waterman gets the start, Waterman does a good job, Waterman holds his own, I think it shows that Kamal Miller's maybe dropped down to the fourth choice center back in the Canadian pecking order. I mean, he did kind of lose his spot a bit at Portland. They were playing him at left back. He didn't even start in the playoffs. So it's a very good vote of confidence for Joel Waterman. He stepped in. He showed that, okay, I can be the number 3 behind Cornelius Bombito. And otherwise, Bombito, I think, deserves a shout. I know we're getting used to every week, like, this kid is so good. This kid is so good. But he's so good. Like, against this Suriname team, they kept a clean sheet in large part because of him. I think this is a game where 2-3 years ago, if you have the back line you did then and you go into this game, maybe it's a 1-1 draw, maybe even lose 2-1. But having Bombito, this guy just cleans up so many messes. He cleans up all your trouble. And Canada can use that sometimes. It allows them to play a bit more aggressive. It allows them to press because they know at the back they got this human eraser, this human mop, whatever you want to call him. He cleans up all your problems.
Absolutely. Elias, do you think with Waterman's performance in this last game, do you think he did enough to prove that he deserves a chance to start more often for Marsh's squad, or do you think this is still Cornelius' spot?
I mean, when you look at them play as a pairing, you can make the comparison individually. Cornelius has his strengths, Waterman has his strengths. They are somewhat different defenders and approach to the defense. But when you look at how Derek Cornelius and Moise Bombito play together, it's very difficult to make an argument towards splitting them up. And it's very clear that Jesse Marsh isn't going to play a 3-back. I think that's when Kamal Miller really lost his start, if not his starting spot, at least his spot as the third. When you see him play in a back two historically with Canada, and even a bit at Portland, you see how almost out of place he is. On a back three, he is super comfortable. He's settled and everything you want from a left side center back. And when the second you give him that space to operate as a 2, it becomes a lot more dubious. And the fact that Jesse Marsh would go without a left-footed center back and went up for Joel Waterman instead and move Moise Bombito to the left side shows you where his stake is, but also that kind of confidence that Joel Waterman has earned. And he's the one that came on as a sub in the last international window. Mm-hmm. And look, he had a very up and down season with Montreal, but he ended it on a high. And I think he's deserved to be that number 3. So I can't see any situation where he loses that, minus a drop in form. But yeah, Derek Cornelius and Moise Bombito is definitely the 2. You can't argue that.
Okay, all right. And now we're gonna move on to fullbacks. What would you guys say about the play of our fullbacks against Suriname? I'll start with you, Elias, since I went with Alex before.
It was nice to see. I talked about this before, but it was nice to see Alistair Johnston and Joel Waterman playing on the same side defense, because that was a flash to the. I was like, oh my god, I haven't seen this, and got me my feelings. But
maybe a tear down the eye.
Maybe not a tear, but definitely a smile. Looking back to better times.
I like
But no, look, I mean, it's so nice to see that if Alfonso Davies isn't available, someone like Richie Larea and Simon Akube both can operate in that spot reliably. Simon Akube, obviously, we haven't seen him in a while coming back from injury, but Richie Larea at Copa America was excellent, right? So it's not just that you're playing against Suriname and there's a gap in quality. No, he can do what he does against the best teams on this side of the Atlantic, and I'm not concerned at all. I think that they both did their job. Again, there was not much asked of them offensively, which means I wanted to see them get a bit more involved in the attack, and they didn't really. But you have Alistair Johnson, who's such a good crosser of the ball, and they didn't really go out of their way to get him in those positions, in those advanced positions where he can whip one in. So I think that that's what I want to see more of. Because again, and this kind of ties back to my earlier point, in games like this, you have to be suffocating in every aspect of play. And that means putting your fullbacks further up the field. That means setting a higher line. That means everything has to be more assertive. And I just didn't see that.
Thank you. Alex, now I have a question for you. What is it that you think that Alistair Johnston needs to see? Because his stock has, skyrocketed since he's moved overseas. What do you think he needs to do so that now heading into the World Cup in 2026 to take his game to the next level and lead his country to, go far in the World Cup or be that guy in the team?
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to see it at Celtic where he's really like dominating. Like they're asking him to be a dominant player in Scotland, and he is. And even he's carrying that over to Champions League, right? He's going up against, what was it, Leipzig they played recently, some other big clubs where he's just going and putting in top performances. I think that's a good start. I do seriously wonder if within the next year we see him make a move because, that'll be something where given his age, his passport, his profile, you do wonder if there'll be maybe a team in the Premier League that looks at bringing him in to give him a taste of that level. But yeah, I just want to see more dominance, but I want to see him carry that over to Canada. Because what I liked and didn't like from this game, say about a Johnson, was that it was a 6-7 out of 10 performance. Like it was good. It was what you want from a fullback, especially defensively. Yeah, he took that cheap yellow, but at least he took that yellow and didn't let Becker go unopposed. He did what he needed to do. But like Elias mentioned, I want to see him dominate offensively because that's what he's doing for Celtic. And I think having that will help Canada's dynamic because I think, for example, Ali Ahmed had a bit of a quieter game because he didn't have Johnston constantly coming forward, allowing Ali Ahmed to drift into that central half space where he's so good. It forced Ahmed to play a bit more wide because he'd maybe look back. He's like, where's Johnston? Johnston's, playing a little more cautious. So I'd like to see him kind of carry over what he's doing with Celtic to Canada because we're seeing what he should be doing with Celtic where like Brendan Rodgers has given him full reign. It's like go up the field, cross the ball, go in the box, drop back. Like he has a bit of freedom that we didn't see in this first leg.
And I'll ask both of you this question. Do you guys think that this team is complete? This squad is completely different without enough Alfonso Davies on the lineup? Or do you guys think it was the same performance? Elias, go ahead.
I think he probably would have urged them forward a bit more just because that's the way he plays. And he would have been like, okay, I need to get forward now because we don't need to worry about certain parts. But I don't think it's a completely different team. I do think that, he operates on a completely different level that Rich Larea does, but I don't think it really changes all that much.
All right. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you get a big upgrade, but I think what Marsh has almost found with Davies that's worked so well is that instead of maybe asking Davies to do everything, that just ask him to do what he does very well and do that at a high level, and you feel the team elevates from that, right? Like that's what he did at Copa America. Davies, yeah, he wasn't dribbling through guys like he usually does, but it was very high-level defense, and it was getting forward on occasion. I think they could have very used the getting forward at least in this game because the defense, Larea did his job. So, yeah, they certainly missed him, but it's something where Marcia set it up where he's not central to the team, and that's a good thing because I think there's other guys who, you now have a Bombito, you now have a Kone, a Eustachio, with David. David was incredible. I'm sure we'll get to him where it's all the cogs, right? It felt like at times under Herdman, it was really Davies and some of those guys would kind of struggle to figure out how they'd fit in around him, whereas Marsh's really given these guys their clear parameters and how they sit.
I like it. All right, so let's move on to the midfield. What are our thoughts? We had a Kone, we had a Eustachio. Neat combination. Elias, I'll start with you. What did you think of our midfield?
I'm still not sold on a two-man midfield. I think in a game like this, it makes a bit more sense. But when you have a pairing of Ismail Kone and Steven Eustachio, one of them or both of them always inevitably have to take that bit more defensive role. And they both can do it, but it does not mean you're getting the best out of them, right? Steven Eustachio and Ismail Kone are both the midfielders that you want in creative positions, that you want driving at defenses or receiving, a ball in the pocket. The problem is now is that when you play with two midfielders like that and you ask them to be more box to box, you have to hamper that kind of creativity. And it showed a couple times when the offense would stall a little bit, they weren't there to kind of impact the game as much as they could have, because they still have, even against Suriname, they have defensive responsibilities. And when you come up against, bigger teams, and you saw it in Copa America, where there were some moments that they both got forward and it was really good to watch. It was really fun to watch, and they got to finally explore that creativity. But then the reality of your position sets in. And I still think that this team is one ball-winning midfielder away, in a proper, truly elite ball-winning midfielder away for being a top 20 team in the world. And I'm convinced of that.
Okay. And Alex, at this point in his career, do you think Ismail Kone has done enough to be considered an undeniable starter for the national team?
I would say so. I think you need those skills. I think you need what he brings to the table. I mean, he also has to get established at Marseille, right? That's probably the big challenge where we're going to see him really take that next step. Because you saw it this summer when he was on, the team completely changed. Like and you felt it when he wasn't on. Like when he struggled in the group stages of Copa America, the team level dipped. And then when he was like against, who was it again? It was Argentina in the semifinals. And he was on, you felt it. Like he's going up against DePaul, all these guys. And it was just like, no problem. So I think he is an absolute like must. But yeah, no, Elias brings up some good points that I think are worth watching. I think, for example, what I like with the two is the press. I think we saw it, like especially when it was Eustachio Chouanière, the way they could step right on top of guys, it helps. But what we're starting to see is that teams are reacting differently to Canada's press. Like they kind of learn, like, all right, the US tried to play through Canada's press and they got cooked. All right, let's adjust. Like Suriname, this was a big surprise. Suriname, they're a possession-based team now. They like to build up the ball. They like to hold on. And they were so scared of Canada's press. They were like, all right, let's just bypass. Let's go direct. Let's go long. So you didn't really need your midfielders right on top for the press because there wasn't anything to press. I would have liked to see some more control. And that's why, I agree with Elias. If you have a third, like a ball winner, that's, I think, long-term, that has to be Nico Seeger. And I think that's probably the idea long-term. He projects that way. He just, he's still, he had a bit of a slow start to the season in terms of getting minutes for Hayuk. He's finally a starter again. And hopefully that will help him hit that level. And maybe Jesse Marsh will start to give him a look there. Because I do feel like in possession, Canada, there's more there. There's more where they could truly dominate teams. They can get the ball, push forward. Because we saw glimpses from it with Kone in this game. There was that one link up where him and Jonathan David, they started to play. They started to have some fun. You're like, all right, that's more of what you want. But I think maybe because of what's going on defensively, we didn't see enough of that. So it's definitely a long-term thing to watch.
Yeah, and that kind of sets me off in my next question. We'll answer Patrick's question in a second. Do you guys want to see that combination again in the next few games? You guys are you guys want to see more from that combination from both Kone and Eustachio together in the midfield? I know you guys said about a third player, but would you guys want to maybe try a different combination? Did you guys like the combination of those two? What do you guys think, Alex? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, what I'd like to see is, because I think I know what I get with Eustachio Kone, and I think it's good. It's not like, it can compete against high levels. You saw it at Copa America. But what I'd like to see is them push it to another level. And I would like to see them try a third. And I think there's benefits to each of the three that I would try. Patrick's shout of Saliba's one I'd like to see, just in terms of the ball playing. Maybe Saliba can come in, combine. Defensively, there's still growth for Saliba to have. But maybe that's where Eustachio can fill in. Or I don't mind I want to see Chouanière Eustachio Kone. Like, okay, Chouanière comes in, brings a little work rate, a little bit of that industry. Or I would like to see Seeger Eustachio Kone. So I definitely think Eustachio Kone, those are your pillars. But I would like to see one of those three tried alongside them to see if that maybe frees up Kone a little more, frees up Eustachio a little more.
like that. Lies.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with Alex. I think that having that ability to let Eustáquio and Kone do what they do best is the most important thing for Canada in terms of getting to that next step as an entire team. And you have Choignard who learned under Samuel Piet, who when you look at ball winners, it doesn't get much better than Samuel Piet. Nathan Saliba is young, but he's still learning again with Samuel Piet. And Nico Seeger, who is applying that same trade, in Europe and at that level. I think that all three are good options, and that's why these friendlies. Again, your first job is to qualify for the Gold Cup, qualify for everything, all this stuff, and then your friendlies are super important because it gives you the chance to experiment and not just getting anyone you can get. That's why we keep on talking about friendlies. You need proper high level friendlies, both in CONCACAF, but also come to ball, get some European countries, get as wide a palette as you can in terms of play styles and approaches, because you need to test these in a game environment. Training only does so much. So yeah, 3-man midfield I still think is the end game for this team, but you just need the right midfield for it.
Can we just pull up Patrick's question? I just want to make sure we answered it.
Yeah.
Could Saliba be an option as a 6 in the not too distant future? Why not?
Yeah.
Right.
I think
He's young, right?
that's it. It just keeps progressing. If he keeps playing the way he did, like to end the year, yes, he's going to get more looks. I am surprised he didn't get called up into this camp, but it's all about consistency, right? Like what you learned over the last 2 months, apply it directly next year, and I'm sure Marsh will not hesitate to give him a look that he deserves.
Is he far away from being a regular call up for Canada, Elias?
He looked good in his cameo, right? And he's come on as his appearance was a sub, but he didn't look out of place, right? And I think that give him another year. If he progresses as much last year as much this year as he did last year that just ended, then I think it's a real difficult decision about whether you play Kyle Larin as that second striker or you put that extra man to the midfield. And I think that Don Silva can ask some real questions and even compete with Mathieu Choignard as third in that midfield pecking order, because I do think it's Choignard's spot right now. And it's tough to argue against that because you just, you see the level he works at, but he's 21 years old, right? I see no reason why he shouldn't soon be making a real difficult decision for Jesse Marsh.
Awesome. Let's move on to the forwards. What were your thoughts, gentlemen, about the forward play in this against Suriname? Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the four, I thought Schaffelberg and Ahmed, they got into good areas at least, right? I thought Schaffelberg, when he got on the ball a few times, Schaffelberg's at his best when it's head down run. And when he did his head down run, he caused some problems. He drew a yellow card, right? He had some good crosses. He's the one who set up Ahmed. I liked it. I just would have liked to see him just do more of it. There was almost some times where there's this certain hesitation of, should I just put my head down and run? Maybe that's just because he hasn't played in a month. It's the opponent. Ahmed, I think Johnston didn't do him any favors, right? Because I think that's what where Ahmed was really good against the US was that he'd get the ball and then he'd run at a defender. And then he'd get the ball again, then he'd cut inside and then hit an overlap. And then he kept mixing it up so much that by the end of the game, Anthony Robinson was how do I deal with this guy? What's going on? I think it was Robinson who started that game.
I think
it might have been whoever it was at left back. He was having troubles, and that's what Ahmed does. And I felt like in this game, he didn't give that same problem just because he didn't really have that same overlap threat. It was too much on the periphery, and we've seen that for the Whitecaps. When you leave him on the periphery, he's not at his best. He's at his best when you put him in those more central channels. Otherwise, in terms of David, he was probably, if it's not Bombito, he's my man of the match. He was just everywhere. He's really taken this number 10 role and made it his own. He's knows how to drop in the lines. He drags defenders with him. He opens up space. And I thought Oluwasi paired nicely with them. I mean, Oluwasi we didn't get to see much of because, all the runs he was making in the channels, they were struggling to get him the ball. But he had that one chance where he hits the post. Yes, the miss will be something that people talk about, but I really liked his run, the way he kind of dragged, went in behind. It's a great striker's run. We don't see enough of that from a Kyle Larin, for example, and it was really good to see that from Oluwasi. For him, it just feels he needs his finished confidence, right? He just needs his confidence of scoring a goal, and then I think he'll really start to come good as a super sub for this team.
Absolutely. And that's actually leads me to my next question. Elias, would you say that Oluwesi did enough to deserve more starts over proven players in the squad?
Enough, I don't know, because off ball he did a lot of really good stuff, and people keep on forgetting, like, that chance was very unfortunate. That double post is, first of all, it's you could do that 100 times and it'll never happen again, but shit happens.
It
But
happens to me every time I play soccer. I hit double posts every time.
the run he makes is such an incisive run, and it's such a breath of fresh air, because my biggest complaint with Kyle Aaron, especially under Jesse Marsh, is he doesn't have the work rate to be that target man up top. And when you have Jonathan David, who is thriving as a 10, which is so funny because it's almost like he's leading a football double life, because he's one of the best poachers in Europe, right? He's one of the best natural goal scorers in Europe, but in Canada, he's doing something completely different. It's the almost exact opposite that's being asked of him, and I just love that. But when you look at Olasei and the way that he is making those darting runs inside, the finishing, like I said, the finishing is going to come, because getting yourself in that spot and getting those chances is the hard part. The finishing is the instinct part of it. He has that instinct. We've seen that instinct both with Minnesota and with the national team. So that's going to come. My bigger concern is he getting in that spot? And he is. So I think he's done enough to keep things as they are, which means, if he started on merit in Jesse Marsh's hierarchy, then I think he'll still be there. If it was just rotating and seeing new things, then so be it. But I think he's done enough to at the very least, keep his place in the current pecking order, because he's doing what's being asked of him, and the finishing will come.
Jonathan is definitely playing. Jonathan David is definitely playing in a different level. We saw it. It was impressive, but I do feel like he needed a little bit of help on Friday night. We'll see what happens Tuesday. Let's move on to the subs. Okay, so we had a few subs come in. What do you guys think? What did you guys think of the impact that they had? How did they change the game, the lineup? Alex, I'll start with you. What did you think of the subs, especially our goal scorer, right, Junior Juliet?
Yeah, well, Junior Hoylett was definitely the best of the subs. It was good to see him come in, and I think that was Hoylett almost needed that, just because we forgot about Junior Hoylett. Like, he's had a bit of a strange last 2 years. He got relegated with Reading, then he went to the Whitecaps, and maybe people thought he'd stick there, and it didn't end up working out. And then he goes to Scotland with Neil Warnock at Aberdeen. Such a weird and random transfer, but then he does great there, and he gets called up, and he deserves it. And then he right when he's going to go to Copa America, he gets injured, and he's injured for a while. Now he's at Hibs, but then he's in good form again, and he just brings something that not many guys have. Like, there's a certain level of class, certain level of calm, poise that Canada needs, because that's why why David has been so important, because without David, there aren't the list of guys who can play in between the lines for Canada right now are what? Like, it's David, it's Osorio, and it's Hoylett, and it's
maybe Ahmed,
maybe, and that's it. Even Ahmed, he's more of an 8 than a 10, and I guess the hope is Kone becomes a 10 if based on what Marseille have been trying to do with him, but we haven't really seen it as much as we would have liked yet. So Hoylett just brings something they don't have, and it's something that I liked. It's something that this game needed, and I think he showed that he definitely remains important in the pecking order. In terms of the other subs, I think Azorio coming into the midfield helped them maybe get a little calm in the second half, right when they were really struggling in that minute 45 to 65 period. So I liked that sub. And then the other one I liked was I liked Buchanan coming in and playing on the left, because I think that's probably going to be his best position, and his way he gets back into the starting 11 is actually on the left, not the right. And it was good that Buchanan just looked like Buchanan. Like, he didn't look like he was hesitating or struggling after the injury. And I think that's good, because Canada's winger depth actually isn't as strong as we feel like it is. So I think having him back is a big plus.
You mentioned something. I'm going to bounce off of that. So Buchanan, you said he's coming back. With him coming back into the picture, do you guys think we'll see less of Ali Ahmed in the lineup, Elias?
I think we'll see less of Jacob Schaffelberg, honestly, because when you look at Copa America, which was definitely his breakout, it was in a very open game, right? Both teams were super extended, super overexposed, and he thrived. But when it came to playing against set defenses, when it came to playing against lower blocks, then he kind of hit a wall. And that's kind of what you see in the Jacob Schaffelberg in MLS, where you play against more organized defenses and more set lower blocks. He then has to look for that space. And that's why I think he's so effective off the bench. It's because now you have a tired defense. Now you have more gaps and more mistakes that are being made. Whereas Tajon Buchanan does have that finesse required to play in between lines and play one-on-one with defenders. And you saw it, right? Just again, this is a Tajon Buchanan who is super rusty, who does not have his usual sharpness because of the fact that he's been out for so long. And he was taking people on one-on-one, and he was looking dangerous, and he had defenders skating. And just that fact that this is, again, a relatively unsharp Tajon Buchanan that's performing at this level fills me with so much confidence. And it was so sorely missed. And it's so nice to see him back. But I think I agree with Alex. I think that's the way into the starting 11 is past Jacob Schaffelberg, because when it's working, that tandem with Ali Ahmed and Alistair Johnston is also super lethal.
Mm-hmm. Alex, you mentioned that Hoylett, he brought a different face to the game and all that. We kind of missed him. Do you think at 34, how much does he have left to give the national team? Do you think we're seeing the end of it? Do you think we still has a lot to go? What do you think of his appearance?
He has a lot. I think he has a lot, because what I've noticed with him for a while now is his game's aged beautifully. Like he's not a guy who, like, he used to be like a pacey guy who attacked guys 1v1, and that's tough for wingers to adjust to. Like, oh, maybe I'm not as fast as I used to be. Maybe the don't have the same muscle responses. And he just kind of was like, all right, like, I'm not as fast as I am. I'm gonna just kind of revolutionize myself into like a 10 who can play between the lines. I can play as a winger, but even when he plays as a winger, you see it. He likes to drift inside. He likes to play in the space. His two best attributes seem to be his intelligence, right? He knows where to be on the field. Like, look at the goal. Look at the way he just kind of sees that the defender's getting dragged out by David. All right, that's where I got to be. Go, head down. Like, a lot of guys don't make that run. And then the other one is just the way he manipulates the ball, like the way he gets on the ball. He dances with his hips. He gives guys the eyes. He doesn't need speed. He doesn't need athleticism to do what he does at his best. So I think the way he's playing, he can play as long as he wants in terms of like 37, 38, 39, just because he's not doing a lot of running, not doing a lot of physical stuff that he used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of another one of the subs, Mathieu Choignard, in his club now, the Grasshopper Club Zurich, we saw that their coach, Marco Chaliban, really recently got fired. Elias, do you think this could impact Mathieu Choignard's playing time and his call-up with the national team?
I don't think so. I think Mathieu Choignard is such a versatile and amenable player that, you just look at his time in Montreal playing under different coaches. Coaches ask him to do different things, and he's kind of done it and excelled in it. I don't see him. I don't see that being a different situation in Switzerland. I think it looks like he's got his head on right, and I mean, just watching him grow in Montreal, it seems like ego was never really a problem, and I don't see why that would be the case. Why that case would be any different in Switzerland. But again, new managers, you never really know what you're going to get until you get it. But I don't see that being a difference maker. And even if it does slightly affect his minutes, I don't think it's going to change where he stands. At least currently, I don't think it's going to change where he stands in Jesse Marsh's hierarchy. So I don't see that being too big of a problem for the national team, at least.
All right. So now I know we spoke about the subs, but I do want to talk about a few subs that weren't there necessarily. We saw, and I might say the name wrong, but 16-year-old forward Shola Jimo of York United FC of the CPL was recently called up to participate in a training camp with the national team. Alex, I'll start with you. Would you say that these are the kind of games where we should be giving him some minutes, or is it too soon for him to start getting these minutes with the...
Too soon. I'd say too soon. I think what they did was perfect because they called him up for the camp. They got a look, right, in terms of with the periphery guys. And they actually brought him to their U17 camp they're having right now. Mm-hmm. So it's good. He's still with Canada. He's still playing. He's getting in the system. Like, at the end of the day, these are very big Nations League quarterfinals, right? Like, Canada wants to go win a trophy. They do got to take these quite seriously. And hopefully, this is something where it just opens the door for down the future of, okay, we've kept an eye on you. We want you in the system that, say, in June of next year, if there's friendlies and he's in great form for York and maybe there's interest of transfers, then you can call him up. So I think this was the right call in terms of him, because I think it's something where, you have to be careful with these young guys. You want to show that you're interested, but you don't want to give too much too soon. And I think that's where Marsh has done a pretty good job so far with a lot of these guys, where he gave a Poku a look earlier, right? But then he rewarded a Knight LaBelle. So clearly he showed that a Knight LaBelle in this camp worked hard enough, earned his opportunity. And I think I'm confident he'll do the same with Gmo if he pops off next year even more than he did this year.
All right. Elias, and do you think that the national team is at a point where it should be normal to have more players from the CPL in the starting lineup?
Not yet, but I could feel it getting there. Honestly, they're starting now to venture into having their players being looked at overseas. They're starting to compete with MLS clubs, and not just being the odd cup set. Now they're competitive and they're taking the game to MLS clubs. And every year you're seeing this. I think that a starting spot may be a bit further in the future, but consistent either as a cameo or on the bench, I don't see why not, because again, CPL has such quality, and having people in your Canadian ecosystem on the bench or consistently in and around the team sheet is so important for the game at the end of the day in Canada, because you still have the World Cup and your team is getting a lot of success, but we're still in this phase of growing the game in Canada, and having people from your local clubs in these situations, not just getting called up to camp once in a blue moon, but actually in positions where they get minutes, I think could be great. And the quality of the league is getting to the point where that's not just like a pity, oh, here's 5 minutes. No, they're doing it on merit and on quality. And that's the near future. Starting is still maybe a bit far, but that is a very real possibility.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, I want to ask you guys, as far as feeling, like Canada won 1-0, right? That's the truth. Did it feel like a good victory to you guys? Did it feel like a solid victory, or did you feel like there was something missing in the game? Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I was satisfied. I've seen enough bad, crazy CONCACAF games where you come out on the edge of it. So maybe that's just because I've seen too many of these games.
Trauma.
The only thing I would have said is maybe win it 2 or 3-0, especially because they had the chances to, right? Like it's something where you always want to put those chances away. You can't forget that a year ago, they went to Jamaica and won the first leg. It was the second leg. I mean, I have confidence that they won't do the same this time around where they lose the second leg to Jamaica and get eliminated. But it would have been nice to go back to Canada with the 2-0 or a 3-0 versus a 1-0, because it is something where Suriname will have the away advantage if they score at all. So it's something where you always worried about that, because football is funny. Maybe they score a corner, maybe they score a set piece, and it's game back on.
Absolutely. Elias, what about you? I know we talked about it a little before the show, but how did you feel? What's the feeling after the game?
I mean, the return leg is going to have like a 30-degree swing in terms of temperature, so I think that'll be maybe a bit difficult for Suriname to kind of get used to so quickly.
Wait,
but
you're saying there's not going to be anybody smoking cigarettes on the sidelines while they're playing? I don't know if you guys got that.
No, I don't. I
Somebody
think there's
walking
going
on
to
the
be
fence with a cigarette in his mouth like that.
No, I think there's going to be a lot of hand warmers. I think there's going to be a lot of parkas. But when I look at this game here, Alex makes a good point where it's like, it's CONCACAF, get your 3 points and get out and be thankful that nothing bad happened. But I still want to see, if I'm looking at this from a developmental standpoint, I still want to see them, have a better showing, because it was there. It's not like, they gave it everything and, they missed a couple chances and that's it. It was there for the taking in terms of just dominating the game a little bit more. And if I'm Jesse Marsh and I'm still getting my team ready for these big tournaments, that's what I want to see. I want to squeeze every single little bit of production and development out as I can in situations like this. And so maybe that's the only disappointment. But again, I'm not gonna sit here as someone who's seen some real awful shit with the Canadian men's national team. I'm not gonna sit here and complain at 3 points. So I just want to see a better showing in Toronto.
Well, guys, it sounds like we've seen a lot in the past, and now just a win makes us happy, right?
Oh, how much time do you have?
Be a long show.
All right, so just last question. Moving on to our next topic. What do you guys want to see from the team on Tuesday night? And what is your prediction, Elias?
I'm going to say 3-0 for Canada.
Okay.
And one thing I want to see is I want to see 3-man midfield. We talked about it, and I want them to follow through. I don't think it'll happen, but I want to see 3-man midfield.
Who would you add?
I gotta go to Sealer. If he is the guy being brought in for that, you have to give him the vote of confidence that yes, we do see you in this spot. So here's your spot.
Okay, Alex.
Wow. Well, Elias picked a great one, so I co-sign what he threw out there. But in terms of what I see, prediction, yeah, I think this is going to be like a 4-0. I think for Canada, the leg one, you minimize the leg one by making a leg two very commanding. If you win 4-5-0, people are going to forget you won 1-0 in leg one. So go out, get some goals, get some confidence. They really haven't had a blowout with Jesse Marsh, right? Like it's all been 1-2 goal games. Like Panama was 2-1, US was 2-1, Mexico was a 0-0 slog. Like they need a goal fest of a game. And I think this is the kind of match for it. So I say go out, win 4-0. And what I'd like to see other than the 3-man midfield, because yeah, that would be great. Give me some Sam Adekugbe. I think he could still bring something to this team. And I think starting him at left back, Larea played some tough minutes. See if he could. See, I really like the way he finished the year for the Whitecaps. He brought something new to that back line. Vanni Sartini had him doing some very interesting things like playing in a back three, also playing like a wing back. I think there's some flexibility there that Jesse Marsh could play around with for long term. So I'd say give me some Sam Adekugbe.
They've complained that Elias and I are too positive, but I'm going to go ahead and be negative, really negative right now. All right. This is so uncharacteristic of me. What if we draw or lose? What is your reaction then?
Big problem.
Yeah, this is.
What's the first thing that comes to mind, Alex? You see the final result, we drew or we lost. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
Well, I'd say disaster, and I'd be curious to know how it happened, because I think what we've seen with Jesse Marsh, to his credit, like especially like the game against the Netherlands aside, and even then, like first game you go out against a top 15 nation, like Canada hasn't lost control of any games, and like even against Argentina, they never really lost control of either of those 2-0 losses. Me losing this game means you lost control, because they're in control. Technically, it's a 1-0 lead at halftime. They're comfortable. They're about to be at home 90 minutes. They rarely lose at home. They rarely lose in Toronto, other than last year. But even then, that was under an interim. Like for me, a loss would signify they lost control, and that just wouldn't make sense from what I've seen under Jesse Marsh. So that would probably be the big thing. Of he clearly would have got something wrong tactically. Clearly, there's some decisions that were made that didn't go well, and also that the players collectively just had a horrific game.
All right. Elias, what was your thought?
I mean, crazier things have happened, obviously, but you have to tear it down to the studs and break down how this could have happened, because it's at the end of the day, if they lose, that means you've conceded multiple goals, right? That's unforgivable. It doesn't matter how much unlucky fluke nonsense. It doesn't matter. It's unforgivable. So you have to tear everything down and kind of analyze every single little bit of debris, because this is just unacceptable.
Do we start calling for his head?
No,
not yet.
No,
not too early, but definitely.
Yeah, if you lose like 5-0, then like, hey, what are you doing here? But I don't think you should call for his head immediately.
All right. I guess we'll stay positive then. All right, that wraps it up.
Maybe if they go 0-3 in the World Cup, then maybe. But that's the only time I'll start thinking about. We
get there, and that's when we'll talk about it. All right, so now we're gonna move. That wraps it up for the Canada men's national team. We're gonna move on to our second part, the Canada women's national team that is coming up. The Canada women's national team, which is ranked 6th by FIFA, and have 2 friendly games coming up. One on November 29th against Iceland, which is ranked 13th. And the other on December 3rd against South Korea, which is ranked 19th by FIFA. What are your thoughts on these matchups? Elias, go ahead.
Look, again, friendlies are the time to experiment. And with a brand new coaching staff that they're not bound to get, they're going to get, because people are not coming back. I want to see experimentation. I want to see people who were either resigned to being subs or who weren't even given a look to get looks, because I don't think Bev Priestman's prototypical 11 was the best 11 they can get. But the most important thing is I want them to develop an attacking identity. I think that's the only thing that is really missing from this national team. And that's got to be priority number one, is figuring out who you are going forward.
Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I was just going to say I was disappointed the games were in Spain because I heard rumors they were going to be in BC, and that was but opponent proved to be the big hurdle. So I was a bit sad at first, but it's good they got games. You need games. You don't want to be missing these windows. The women's calendar is very strange for them because their next competitive games could be 2026 because there's no. I know in CONCACAF they flirted with the idea of doing a Nations League on the women's side, but that never materialized. Maybe it does next year. The qualifiers for the World Cup continue to be these tournaments, which is a bit disappointing. So like you have to use the next 2 years if you're only going to play friendlies for the next 2 years. You got to experiment. You got to find out how to take this team to that next level. So I think these are two good opponents because they're good, right? They're good opponents. They're top 20 teams. Iceland, like they're a solid side. South Korea, we saw Canada play a pretty good 0-0 draw. It was like a year and a half ago with them. But yeah, they're also teams where Canada can experiment and play comfortably. That was a bit of the annoying part about them playing Spain, was that like it's Spain and they almost gave Spain too much respect, and they ended up we didn't learn anything from that game. Like Canada kind of parked the bus. It was a 1-1. Cool, you got a result, but it's a friendly, right? Like you want to see a bit more from the performance, and I think this level of opponent will allow them to do that. Bring in some of those younger faces, maybe mess around with your formation, give some ideas so that when the new coach comes in, they can look back at these two games and be like, all right, I liked what I saw here. I maybe didn't like what I saw here.
And yeah, we've seen definitely like a lot of news outside, which I'm sure Alex and Elias, you guys have spoken about it endlessly, about everything that's going on around the Canada women's national team. Is there anything outside of the noise? Is there anything that you guys are looking in particular out of these games? Is there anything? I know Elias, you spoke a little bit about them finding an identity now. But what is it? Is there anything besides the identity that you guys want to see out of these games? Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of these. Yeah, I think the new faces is a big one. And what I'd like to see is start to pass the torch in the sense that like this should be Olivia Smith's team going forward heading into the next 2 years. Like you see at the level she's hit right away with Liverpool, the level she hit last year. She missed the Olympics. I think that's something in hindsight that did not age very well, the idea to leave her out. So like make this Olivia Smith's team, really throw her out there and let a lot run through her. The same for like a Jade Rose, the Simia Wujo. It feels like that's their time to step up. And I would like to see pieces supported around that idea. So, and the other one is just, maybe reward some form. Like I think Gabby Carl's had a phenomenal season. She's about to go play in the NWSL championship for a trophy. Is one of the key pieces on that Washington team. Give her a look in this team because, I like what she brings to the table. And, what's maybe a bit of a blessing, a bit of a curse is that you lose some key players like Lacasse and Buchanan to major knee injuries. It was tough to see, but that opens the door to experiment for some other positions.
Yeah, absolutely. Elias, is there anything besides the identity that you would be looking into these games?
Yeah, like we hearing about Buchanan tearing her ACL too was just devastating, because now you're like, Vanessa Gilles, rightfully so, is getting all these plaudits as being, the heart of that defense. But Kadeisha Buchanan has quietly been as good, if not better than her on a number of occasions, right? She almost never puts a foot wrong. She is that imposing, but at the same time, quietly effective partner on the left side of the defense. And with her gone, I want to see what they would do with a 4-back. I want to see them at least right. This is what you do. You experiment. Vanessa Gilles and Jade Rose are unequivocal starters, right? There's no debate. And beyond that, you have Shannon Zadorsky, who has had some good moments with the national team. Is she good enough to start? Yes, I think she can. It's the consistency that concerns me a little bit. And I think this is the perfect opportunity to experiment with a different formation because your hand has been forced. This is a new coach coming in. You've lost arguably your best defender, and now you have to kind of adapt with that. So do you add in a third midfielder? Do you, drop a forward into the midfield? Do you kind of do what Jesse Marsh is doing with Jonathan David operating as a bit of a 10 or the second striker? You have all these options now because, unfortunately, through injury, your hand has been forced to change something. You cannot play the way you usually do because even if Shalina Zadorsky does enter in that left-sided center-back slot, she can't do what Khadija Buchanan does. Mm-hmm. So nobody on the national team, even including Vanessa Gilles or Jade Rose, can do what Khadija Buchanan does. So now, same thing goes for Chloe Lacasse. In fact, she's one-on-one, probably the best one-on-one dribbler on the team. So those two spots you now have missing for the next year. And this is the perfect time to, throw a haymaker, throw a changeup, and try something new. Iceland and South Korea are two very different teams. They get two very different outlooks on and approaches. And I think it's a great chance to maybe apply the scientific method to whatever it is you want to change. And this is a good chance for any interim or, replacement coach to stamp their signature on what they think the team should be doing.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned it, Elias, with Khadija Buchanan being ruled out for the season. Who do you think should be receiving the call-up, Alex?
It's a good question. I mean, in terms of like-for-like replacement, that's one thing where this is going to be a good test for Canada because they don't actually have they've got elite center backs, 3 elite center backs, and then maybe the depth is a bit like who's next, right? Like Zadorsky can step up. We know she's already in the mix. Maybe a Megan Reid. It was good in the first half of the season. She didn't play too much for Angel City. In the second half, she did. Maybe there's a chance to see what Megan Reid can bring. Because, of course, this is a dual national at the beginning of the year that they brought in that we didn't really see much of. If not, I know there's some other players who can slot in, like an Emma Reagan. I think it would be good to call her up again, and maybe you give her a look as a 6 or there. Gabby Carl's another player I'd like to see. Maybe if you're going to stick with the back 3, try Carl on the outside, because with Washington, what really fascinates me is they've got a Barca coach. They play a bit of that philosophy, and they've asked Carl to play like an incredible role in their build-up where she's kind of like almost as a 3, and then she bursts forward. Like the amount of deep progressions she makes a game is very high. Maybe you try Carl in a bit of that outside back role. But this is definitely a good test in terms of center back depth, and I think Reid's probably the name top of mind for me.
Elias, who would you bring in?
Gabby Carl and
it doesn't have to be like for like. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
No, and that's one thing, right? Because Yasmin Ali-Dou is right there, and I think as a 10, if they're looking to kind of shift into a 4-back, having someone like Ali-Dou as a 10, with the security of having Jessie Fleming and Simi Wujo behind you, it's very reassuring. And playing in Portugal is not the biggest litmus test for a player, because it is still in development and it's getting there, because there's some teams like Benfica, like Sporting, that are putting up some impressive showings. You beat Barcelona in the Champions League. So that's definitely something noteworthy. But I think that she's definitely one of those people who has spent – she's not really one for the future. She's definitely in her prime now. But if you're looking for someone to kind of give some proof of concept to this strategy, too, if you want to play with the 4-back and a 10, she's probably the player I would look towards, because I can't really think off the top of my head someone who a natural 10 who can kind of get into that spot and make your system work immediately. You could definitely, have someone come in. I think like someone like who's as versatile as Janine Becky can definitely make something work. Having Jessie Fleming play in a more advanced position is not unnatural to her. But a proper 10 getting in there just to, make sure that this system is viable in some capacity, I think Yasmin Ali-Dou is a really good shout.
Alex, I know I already asked you this question, but is there anybody, if it's not a like for like, that you'd want to see get an opportunity there?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a few I'd say I'd keep an eye on. I think Clara Solerisi getting back in would be a big one in terms of just that profile out wide, bring a bit of speed. If you're going to experiment with 4-back, going back to natural wingers, I really like what a Larissy could bring. In terms of some other profiles, there's been a Caroline Kerr. She's at Bayer Leverkusen. She's been banging in the goals to start the year. more of a 9 profile, but maybe you throw her up front just because Canada's experimented a lot. What's nice with an Evelyn Viens, she can play on the wing, so you can always push a Viens out. We've seen Hoydema tried out there. Maybe you try something different up front to, because you could also try like some sort of 4-3-2-1, because I want to see a 3 in midfield as well. I think it feels like we're at some point we surely got to see an Awujo, Grosso, Fleming. Maybe you try them in like a 4-3-2-1 where you ask like a Viens, and an Aladou to play underneath a number 9, and maybe that number 9 could be a Kerr, or maybe that number 9 ends up being someone else like a Hoytema or something.
That's
I do think Grosso is better suited for a 3 midfield than a 2, because she does want to cover as much ground. She can find those pockets. I think that'd be really interesting.
That's very interesting. And last question. So Andy Spence, Katie Collar, Diana Matheson. We don't really know who takes the decisions for that team. How much is that a concern? Because we do have the Canada Women's National Team, the big competition 2027 with the World Cup. How important is it to find stability in that department, Alex?
It's huge. It's huge because I think no matter what happens with I just would like to see them, look for the future. And I think you do wonder if there's no, maybe a lack of a clear decision maker. Again, like we kind of saw it in the last camp. It just felt like last camp was all about continuity, which is fine in some scenarios. I think it's fine maybe from the player's perspective. It is a tough time where there's, that investigation hanging over their heads, and you almost want to just keep that normalcy, right? Like just to escape from that all. But ultimately, this is a reality where you need to prepare for 27. You need to do everything in your power to prepare for 2027. And it felt like whatever they were doing last time, they need to axe it so it's more on the future. And I think by doing that, maybe one clear voice is the way to do it. Maybe putting an interim, right? Like a true interim. It felt like that last camp, the staff was more of a like, here's what we put together to go do a job. And, maybe in this camp, they put it as, all right, here's one person who we're letting be the interim. This person's basically getting a free audition. Because I like Katie Collar. She's a very good, bright mind. I think if you give her the reins, I'd be very confident what she could do. Do that, may as well have some, because, okay, maybe is she going to be considered for a head coach job? Unlikely. I think it's something where it's more likely we see her helm an NSL team first. But if maybe you see her as an assistant, this is a great chance to audition, show some of her ideas. So I think the leadership is huge, because we saw it in the last camp. It was more of a camp of survival versus anything. And I think I want them in this camp to really start to look forward.
All right. Elias, do you think, change would bring stability, or we should keep stuff the same for it to feel stable till 2027?
I think they're in a very similar position to where Canada was in their the men's national team was in their coaching surge, right? You have this, because there are a lot of similarities between Bev Priestman and John Herdman. From again, I'm not talking about drone stuff. Talking about just as a coaching profile, right? What their specialty is, what they use, and how they get their message across, and also tactically when you look at the way they line up. So what I'd like to see come in is someone who, from a purely tactical perspective, is specialized at maximizing their players' efficiency, because that is what Jesse Marsh came in and did. When not just when you look at Alfonso Davies simplifying his role, but look at all over the pitch, he's managed to really make this team a lot more efficient in their individual executions. And I think that may also be the key to helping this team going forward in attack, is because you're not getting the best out of your players individually, and in turn, as a whole, there's something is lacking. And so having a player who specializes in something like that, kind of like Jesse Marsh, but I'd like to see him, because Canada, you look at the men's national team, it's not the same needs as the women's national team. The men's national team has a lot of pace and power and has a lot of verticality to it. The women's national team is much better in possession. So I don't want the exact same kind of manager. I don't want a Red Bull manager that's going to, let's get vertical. I want a manager who maybe specializes in the same thing, but does have a possession background. Because when you have Sima Wujo and Jesse Fleming in the midfield, when you have people like, when healthy, Kadeisha Buchanan, you have Ashley Lawrence, you have these players who are excellent in possession. They can kind of take over the tempo of the game. Quinn is healthy, and they're back in the mix as well. You have people like that who are capable of controlling the tempo of the game. And I think that is kind of the difference between both national teams, and that's why I want to see them get a different kind of manager tactically. But in terms of their specialty and their end goal, it has to be about optimizing your individuals, because it's very clear as a group they're unified. I think the Olympics did a great, for all the nuts and chaos, did a great job of unifying this group. Morale is in a really good spot considering how well they did. Now you have to focus on the X's and O's, and that's the kind of manager I think they need to bring in.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that wraps it up for the Canada women's national team and our subjects for the day. Next up, we're going to have our wonderful segment of social media.
I'm just realizing now how outdated that bit is, because it's not even like
First of all, there's no
Blue Sky
Bluebird anymore.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And now it's Blue Sky.
Exactly. So we'll figure it out.
We'll
We'll
get
go
to
back to the
that.
drawing board. Exactly. But yes, Twitter.
How times have changed.
Yeah. All right. So, how about Paul Pogba in Montreal? He can begin training in January, play as of March. What do we think? Somebody said, this Tom Pearson Joyer said, washed, cursed, lazy, party boy, whatever. Putting current Pogba in the current CF Montreal midfield will be like racing a Lamborghini in the Tour de France. Would easily be the best, most talented midfielder in the club's history, and it's time to be honest about this. Oh, snap.
We also got a question from Dr.
Fighting
Foot
words.
asking the same thing.
Yeah, those
right?
are some fighting words. Paul Pogba in MLS, a good idea, Dr. Foot asks. Man, now I have something to say. I mean, guys, that's like we've had skill. CF Montreal has had skill in this team. To me, the idea of having Paul Pogba as a midfielder for CF Montreal is the equivalent of having a Lorenzo Insigne or a Frederic Bernardeschi on the field, because you never know what to expect them. Extremely talented, but you never know what to expect of them outside the field. That's my opinion. What do you guys think? Alex, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say about Paul Pogba, I mean, he's, the comments aren't wrong in the sense that he would bring an immense talent. He's a very talented player. When he was in his prime, he was incredible. I think there's a couple of things you have to consider is how close is he to that level? I mean, that we'll find out in due time. Second thing is the physical condition is the big one, because this is a player that struggled a lot with injuries, and a league like MLS where it's 5-hour flights, cross country travel, physical play. How will he handle it? What I would say about Pogba, if you're a team that can build a very good structure, put 10 very good guys around him, or 10 guys that have a semblance of structure, he would make sense as like a wild card, a final piece. I love that you mentioned Insigne, because it would be a good comparison in the sense that I don't think if you bring him in and make him the centerpiece of your project like a Toronto did, it's not going to be a very good project. But maybe if you already got some pieces in place, you're looking for a certain profile and Pogba fits that profile, you step in, he's going to be a guy really elevate to. So I think it's something that, say if he ends up at an LAFC, if he ends up at one of those clubs where there's already that in place, he'll be excellent. But for a Montreal, I think you'd have to really look and is the structure right to support a Pogba? Because if not, it could be a disaster.
That's actually very interesting, Elias, because what Alex mentions is Pogba would need a perfect structure around him for a starting 10 that is starting 9 that is consistent, including him. But last year, I think, how many games did we have where we saw a consistent lineup? 6?
Yeah.
The 34?
Yeah,
so
a handful.
Can we expect better 2025 if we have Pogba? What do you think, Elias?
No, not really. And for all the reasons that Alex laid out, but also just the fact that this is not what the team needs, right? I mean, on paper, vintage Paul Pogba would absolutely that midfielder that can transition from an 8 to a 10 seamlessly and be that missing link between the midfield and the attack. Yeah, that's perfect. But that Paul Pogba is not what the team needs, and more than just a personality thing, right? Fitness. Laurent Courtois asks a lot, and people were mad at Bryce Duke for not running. You want to replace it with Paul Pogba? Like that's no,
Maybe
that's
one
not.
negative with another negative will do a positive. I don't know.
No, that's not how that works. You can't be mad at Bryce Duke for not showing enough effort, which I mean
Yeah.
he fixed by the way, and then go like, what's the answer? Paul Pogba. No, that would arguably be worse in terms of a counter pressing and a Grinta perspective. So no, I don't think Paul Pogba is the answer to the questions. If they do somehow manage to sign him, because like it's a French speaking city, but Paul Pogba is not going to want to come to a project anyway. He's going to want to come to a finished to a finished system that is, again, like Alex said, you need one last thing, right? He's not going to want to come to in 2 or 3 years we're going to be really really good if everything goes right. No, that's not what he wants, right? And it's not going to be attractive to him. So no.
No Pogba, no Montreal. Let's go. Next one.
So, next one.
All right. Bayern might sign a strong backup for Harry Kane. This is Bayern in Germany Twitter page. Bayern might sign a strong backup for Harry Kane. They said strong. Since Matistel's future is uncertain, Max Berry has been following Jonathan David for several years and has always kept an eye on him, including now at FC Bayern. The Canadian striker will most likely be on the market as a free agent, I'm assuming it says. Aria commented, this can be huge for Canada to have two Canadians play for the same prestigious club, but I do not think Jonathan David would accept a backup role. As much as I would love this move as a Bayern fan, David deserves much more than just a backup role. What do you think, Elias?
Oh, 100%. What we've talked, God, how long have we been talking about where Jonathan David's going to end up? We've been talking about it for 2 or 3 years now. So at this point, wherever he ends up, but it has to be in a starting situation. It has to be in a starting scheme, right? I thought that Arsenal would be a pretty good look. I thought that to a certain point, United would be a pretty good look, but now they've got like 4 strikers, and I don't want to see that. Barcelona's going to be a pretty good look because, but again, having him as an heir to Lewandowski, but that's not now, right? That's in maybe a year or two. So for the immediacy, I think that, Arsenal, if you look at top competing European clubs, I think Arsenal's probably the best bet. Patrick White just sent a comment that like chills me down to my bones. And I hope Jonathan David doesn't follow because in theory, Jonathan David to Madrid would make a lot of sense.
Elias is a Barcelona fan.
Yes, for those who don't know. But Jonathan David to Madrid would actually fix a lot of their problems, and I hate that I put that out into the universe.
Perez, don't watch this.
yeah. Log off Florentino Perez because no. But they need a 9, and Jonathan David is there. But anyway, notwithstanding, Jonathan David needs a system where he can play his own game. He has the freedom to be both a target man and kind of drop in. And Bayern is not that, not as a starter. So I don't think it's the best move. Sorry, Andy.
Alex, what do you think?
The thing is, I think he would fit in Bayern. I think he would, but the question is, would there be a sacrifice made? Like, I think the Bayern move makes sense if there's a reality where him and Kane play together, because I think they could complement each other, right? Like Kane, for example, you watch him play. This guy's everywhere on the field. David's everywhere on the field. I think there's something where they can make that work. Maybe David is the 10 and Kane is the 9, right? Maybe they do something like that. David's now a 10, as we saw for Canada, right? But the only problem is they have the prodigy, Jamal Musiala, who is also a pretty good 10. And that's where you there's just an issue of too much good there. And I think that's something for David. You look, are you really going to get a starting role? Maybe they move Musiala to the left. Maybe Davies stays and he ends up, filling in the half space. There's a lot of ifs there. So with Bayern, I think there's just going to be a lot more clubs around that are going to offer more stability. I think there's only one player or one team you go to be a backup right now, and it's Barcelona, and that's because Lewandowski's like 37, right? So it's like at least there's more of a reality that even, okay, in year 1 you split minutes, then by year 2 he's 39. If you're not getting in over 39, Lewandowski, I know he's going to continue to age. So Barcelona is the one where I'd say you can accept being a backup. But I mean, it helps. He grew up as a young Barcelona fan. Maybe that's the case. But otherwise, yeah, you have to be a starter. Right? You gotta, I think there'll be enough clubs around where like AC Milan. I feel like AC Milan will be someone that looks like, okay, could he fill that number 9 role? You wonder if maybe Inter Milan sells one of their guys, like maybe a Lautaro Martinez gets sold to like a Real Madrid and they need a number 9. I can see a David going there. I'm just throwing random ideas out there in the universe.
Don't get hurt, Elias.
Don't manifest that. No.
The Premier League, there's enough guys, right? I will continue to say it's a shame they bought Solanke because I thought David would fit that system perfectly. But who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they find a way to fit in at Spurs, Arsenal. So no, David definitely will have enough options, but I don't think he needs that Bayern unless they promise him that they'll find a way to work him and Kane together.
I don't think he's at a stage in his life in his career where he needs to accept the backup role. I think he's still got so much to improve.
No.
So yeah,
especially his quality.
As much as I love Bayern because they're my team, and I would love to see talent after talent, realistically, he's not there. So no, not a good idea. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Yes, so sprinklers turned on early as a 10-man Venezuela desperately hold on for a draw with Brazil. Nowhere does dark arts quite like South America. Yeah, and J Dot commented, but CanMNT's national team can't play with drones. So kind of a joke there, but I mean, guys, like I'm Peruvian and I watch these South American games, and I swear every time there's something has to happen. It's so silly. But yeah, I mean, what are we talking about here, right? Like it's just kind of a joke. What do you guys think about that? About sprinklers going off in the middle of a game, of a World Cup qualifier game? How's that?
Hey, whatever edge you can get, right? I love the little things where it's like the one that's really like gotten to me lately has been the altitude like battles where it's like Bolivia struggling. Somehow plays in the highest stadium in the world, and then they found a stadium at even higher altitude. It's like, guys, what are we doing here? They go beat Colombia with 10 men and all that. But then I love how this week Ecuador, who plays in also very high altitude, they're like, all right, we're going to go play at like ocean level because we know we're better than you. And they go beat Bolivia 4-0. Like, I love all these teams where they're kind of like fighting. Should we play high? Should we play low? Little stuff like that where, hey, marginal gains do help.
It's crazy because, us, the regular fans, we watch the games on the field. That's all we worry about, just our teams playing. But the coaches and the administration, they're thinking of as you said, mentioned, Alex, right? Every little edge that they can gain. Elias, what do you think of that? If that happens in Europe.
I love CanMNT so much, man. I love CanMNT so much. And it's exactly that, right? Because you have to also plan they don't just map it out like, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, here, there. Yeah, okay. No. Altitude is the only thing. They sort by altitude when they plan ahead. They don't care about geographic location, I'm sure they're currently building an even higher up stadium now. It's just exactly even higher up, where you have to play with an oxygen mask on or something. But I think I love it for one. The sprinklers is a bit of shithousery, never hurt anybody. But
somebody got fired.
That's why I love CanMNT, man. You can never get enough of it. It's great.
So funny. Next one, I think the next one isn't so funny anymore.
No, that's funny.
This one, this is, as Taylor Tolman said, this is disgusting. If you guys saw this video clip, Flotsam and Jetsam said so embarrassed to be part of CONCACAF with some of the most uncivilized soccer fans on the planet. Yeah, this is not pretty in any country, in any league, in any sport. Like when the players or the coaches get attacked, if you guys saw the video clip, it was the Mexican head coach. When they were playing in Honduras, they lost that game, and as they were saying their goodbyes, the Honduran fans decided to throw stuff into the field, and one of the cans landed on the Mexican coach's head. And as you guys can see, he was bleeding out, and he pretty much walked out of the stadium bleeding out. I mean, that's just, I don't know. And there's no place in sports for that. Sorry, guys. There's just no place in sports. We're all passionate. Everybody's passionate about the sport. Everybody loves the sport. It's soccer, basketball, whatever you love. But there's no need for that. What do you guys think of this then?
Yeah, it's embarrassing, right? It's CONCACAF at the end of the day. It's going to be labeled as a CONCACAF event, and you could talk about getting this out of soccer. It happens all the time. Not all the time in soccer, but it's happened throughout history in soccer. It's just, you have to end up punishing people, but like I feel like there's no way to mitigate it because idiot fans are going to be idiot fans.
Yeah.
No, because I think it's something where, look, I love a good home field advantage. Like I love when fans Like I love in CONMEBOL lately in Libertadores, they have fireworks before games to intimidate other teams. You got other, like there's things you can do, but there's, a few things you don't do. And, one of them is don't throw shit at people. Frankly, like just don't. And another one is, don't yell anything that's homophobic, sexist, racist, or anything of the like. Those are the twos you don't. You can do anything else in terms of have fireworks outside a team's hotel. You can do fireworks in the game, have flair, swear at the other team. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but just don't throw anything at people. Don't say any, abusive language. And so it always sucks, especially in CONCACAF, because we struggle with both of those things. There's been some, there's always chance as well. Stuff like that. It's just like, no, it crosses the line. And it's too bad for Honduras too. Like it was a big game. They win 2-0 at home. It's such a good moment for the country. And you kind of, a lot of the talk post game isn't that, oh, Honduras beat Mexico 2-0. Mexico was the number 1 seed heading into Nations League. Like Honduras was the 8th seed. Don't forget, now they have a huge advantage, and everyone's talking about a beer can hitting the coach of the Mexican team.
Yeah. And you know what I love, I guess the nicest part, I guess, of that whole thing is that you just see the Mexican coach. He's like, oh, look, I'm bleeding. Okay, but I'm going to continue shaking your hands, just just look at talking to everybody like, oh, sorry about this, guys. They're still going to give you a hug, and it's like, for all the rep that soccer gets of us being like, we throw ourselves on the floor for a little scratch in the eye or whatever. He just walked out of there with like blood in his face, like it's just another day at the office, So, yeah, I guess that was the nicest part of the whole thing. All right,
I think it's.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, what I would say, like, I think he handled it perfectly, because I think if you show any sign of weakness, then it rewards the fans, right? Like, look at it, we got him, he's rattled. Like, I think that's why credit to him the way he handled. Like, just shows it doesn't even like what are you doing it for? Like, you must feel like an idiot when you hit the coach and he's laughing. You're not getting a psychological edge there, anyways.
Yeah. It's a shame, and you could see when he will go up to the Honduran players, he just lost the game, guys. He just lost the game, and he's going to the Honduran players, and the Honduran players are looking at their fans like, "What the hell are you guys doing, man? Like, come on!" Like, anyways, damn shame. Go ahead, Elias.
Damn shame. Yeah. Last tweet.
Truly, an end of an era. 2 2012ers have their careers ended in a span of a week. We have the two legends. What do you guys think? Go ahead, Elias.
Yeah, I mean, everyone looks at Christine Sinclair as like the face of that generation, but like, Desiree Scott, Diana Matheson, Erin McLeod, like there's too many to name from that 2012 team that really put Canada's soccer on the map, right? Because that was at a time where the men's national team was nowhere to be found. And then again, continuing after that, when the men's national team really just up until recently was borderline non-existent in terms of reaching any of the heights that the women's national team did. And they really did lay a lot of the foundation that led to the growth of soccer in Canada. And I think this is like the last of that generation. I think they're all retired now, if I'm not mistaken. At least, the people that were at their peak at that time. And so it's kind of bittersweet because, yeah, this is the first national team that, I was invested in. For Canada at least, because I get Greece and all that, whatever. But from a Canadian national team perspective, that was the first time I actually followed the national team was because oh wow, there's success and there's actually like I can enjoy watching soccer because oh my god, Canada's actually winning for once. So yeah, thank you again to Desiree Scott, who also got her little good, not as well publicized goodbye tour as Christine Sinclair's, but she got hers. Sophie Schmidt got hers. So again, all these people deserve to be statues, all of them, the whole gang. The statues for everybody. Everybody gets a statue.
True trailblazers, absolutely. Go ahead, Alex.
It's kind of like Oprah, everyone gets a statue.
I love it. No, I think it's important to remember them, and I hope, like, we know Christine Sinclair is going to be remembered. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, no one's touching that goal record for a long time, if at all. Like, she's going to be remembered, but hopefully the Scotts, the McLeods, the Karina LeBlancs, you can throw into that mix, right? Like the Sophie Schmidts, all these. Hopefully they get remembered because, yeah, we've been spoiled in the 2020s. Let's not kid ourselves. Canada won a gold medal in 2021. That was super great. Like, the men's team made a World Cup for the first time in forever. Now they're going to host another World Cup. Who knows? Maybe the women's team do well in 2027 and they add another chapter to all this. The 2020s have been great. But, yeah, in the 2010s, like especially – in terms of football in general in this country, was a very big moment where, there's starting to be some inflection, and this women's team was a huge, huge part. Like them winning that bronze in 2012 was one of the biggest moments of a whole generation, dating back to, the 2000s and the 90s. So for them to do that, it's huge, and they build it up with 2016 as well. So for Scott to play a big role in it, just her story too, right? Just no nonsense defensive midfielder, was playing youth sports in Manitoba, finds a way to grind out a career, never even scores a professional goal, but doesn't matter because that's just never her game. It was just head down, do her thing, be the destroyer in the midfield, just like a different era of player. And it's great to see her celebrated, because that team, I think for a lot of people of all ages, like that's really where soccer got put on the map, was 2012. Like for all the fans of the 2021 Olympic team, the 22 World Cup team, I bet you most of them originates back to that 2012 team.
I think it was the first time the national team was national news, I think, or the first time in a long time that it was national news, right? This was everywhere. Patrick White asked if Amy Walsh was part of the group in 2010. I don't know. I think she was retired by then. I'm pretty sure. Amy, if you're watching, please let us know. But yeah, I think she was retired by then. I'm not sure. If not, she had just retired. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that concludes our show. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Alex, for being here today. To our special guest, Alex, for your wonderful insight and your time. Friends and listeners, thank you for giving us your time today, and we certainly hope you enjoyed our show today. This podcast is free and will always be free. However, if you would want to support us and help the Ball is Round grow, go ahead and join our Patreon page, which you can find the link in our X page or our new Blue Sky page, and in the bottom of the screen here. Only $4 a month. That's it. That's it for tonight, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week for episode 206.